Healthy Living Alliance is calling on government to increase the sugar tax by 20%. The organisation says a levy increase will help reduce the high number of non-communicable diseases like type 2 diabetes, hypertension and stroke. They're currently regarded as a burden to the health system. But others say a sugar tax hike will lead to job losses and decimate the sugar industry. For more on this, I'm joined by Nzama Mbalati from the Healthy Living Alliance. Nzama, thank you so much for speaking to us here on Newsnight this evening. So the SA Cane Growers Association is saying that the publication of the draft rates and monetary amounts and amendments of the Revenue Laws Bill, which includes an increase in the health promotion levy, also known as the sugar tax, took place without any consultation with the industry. Do you know if that's the case and what level of engagement has been with all stakeholders regarding increases to the sugar tax?
So we are actually in the same, thank you very much for the opportunity. We're actually in the same radar as the sugar industry, because I don't think the sugar industry is the only role player and a stakeholder in this issue. Communities are involved, communities are affected, health department is affected. So I think we are actually in the similar situation, but I think the main issue that we wanted to put forward is the sugar industry has been pulling its leg for a very long time. We're coming from the BRICS summit now, and I wrote some of the op-ed that was talking about how Brazil and India, respectively, Brazil combined with the US has moved to 73% in terms of converting the sugar cane and sugar into biofuel and ethanol. The same as India, which has moved to 20% in this year. And we think that it's problematic that the sugar industry is holding the health of people who live in South Africa at ransom for its failures and for it being on its knees. So this industry is not going to survive if it doesn't want to transform, if it doesn't want to look at alternatives in terms of plantations, in terms of, utilizing sugar over and above the sugar consumption. Because now, if you look at the sugar master plan, it's only talking about 90%. Increasing the demand of sugar to 90% for consumption. And there has not been transparency by the sugar industry in terms of the sugar master plan itself. There's been moratorium from 2001 to 2002, 2002, 2003, 2003 to 2004. That, we have not seen result and transparency in terms of the accountability by sugar industry on what has been achieved in its sugar master plan.
So just for our viewers, when you talk about the Sugar Master Plan, that's part of the Agricultural and Agro-Processing Master Plan, which paves the way for the broader agricultural sector. And each subsector within agriculture has its own master plan, as you say. So just to put that in context for those who don't know. And I agree with you completely that every part of the agricultural sector needs to transform going forward, keeping in mind that fine balance between job creation, between sustainability of production, between market demands. And on that point, I want to talk about some of the myths around the sugar tax. Now, the SA Cane Growers Association also says that government has produced no concrete data demonstrating the effectiveness of the health promotion levy or sugar tax to justifying increasing the levy further. Yet we've seen so many health officials talking about the impact of sugar on people's health. Is the assurance that this levy is effective backed by scientific studies?
Yeah, certainly. I think that's a very great question, because the behavior of the sugar industry has been very disingenuous. If you look at what was the objective of implementing the sugar tax in South Africa, one of the objectives was to reduce overconsumption of sugar amongst the population. That has been achieved. There is enough data and studies that have been conducted in Soweto, here in Gauteng, also in the Western Cape, in Langa, which has shown that actually amongst the high consumers, particularly young people, there have been reduction in the sugar consumption. The issue about the reduction of obesity, which we think the industry is very much disingenuous, is because you can't measure obesity in a short term. You need to measure obesity in a very long term. You need a good 10, or more years to actually turn the tide against obesity. And you need to look at other variables in terms of the strategic plan, in terms of addressing the non-communicable diseases in this country. So I think that has been very disingenuous because the sugar industry has decided to overlook the data that is available, that indeed the tax, in as much as it was watered down, in as much as it has actually not been increasing in line with inflation in this country, that it has actually managed to achieve the objective of reducing sugar consumption, in order, in a long term, to reduce obesity and its associated non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, which is a big tsunami in this country, the second cause of death. And sugar is at the center of it. And I think the biggest issue
I want
here
to
is,
jump in there, if I may, because yes, sugar plays an incredibly important part. But as you say, there are so many other factors that within a short space cannot be measured. And I think it's also important to note that if we only target sugar as the prime evil and we do not address those other concurrent lifestyle factors, we're really not going to get anywhere. And we're going to be taxing the sugar industry when in fact we're not putting as heavy a burden on other societal or lifestyle factors, such as what's being done to increase people's access to exercise, their access to healthy quality foods. You can't just tax people into not drinking sugary beverages, but you're not making healthy vegetables more accessible and more affordable for them. Is that a fair comment?
I would say certainly you need to look at all variables, right? So in treating one variable or the other, I think what is important here is government's intervention in terms of promoting health taxes from tobacco, from alcohol, from sugar-sweetened beverages is right. That's one of the assets in our toolbox in addressing obesity and addressing ill health in this country. Well, combined with that, and one of the things we've been calling for as Healthy Living Alliance is to revive the National Health Commission and make sure that the National Strategic Plan on non-communicable disease is well funded. Because currently now is that we know that that strategy is not funded. It's important that we can have safe zones for people to exercise. That's important. We totally agree that we do need a holistic approach. I think the problem that we have currently is the sugar industry is telling us, this is not important. You need to look at only the other things or bring awareness on people. When the sugar industry is failing to actually address fundamental issues and the booming market of ethanol, in terms of really addressing, some of its core challenges. Because if you look, for example, one of the issues with the sugar industry is that in its failure to, transform and diversify, and there have been a lot of facing of Black women and farmers who are growing, who actually are the biggest losers in the sugar chain overall, in terms of how the sugar manufacturers are actually making a lot of money. And again, I think we need to put it across that this industry is not a holy cow. We know the issue about Tonga Dulet, which is a big burning issue now, about the industry that is actually complaining about, its downfall, but failing to, own up into corporate governance as one of the biggest issue that is actual scandal that has actually hit this country. So I think we need to really look at this issue. I agree in a holistic way, but I think what we are getting now is one lobbying, one pushback by the sugar industry that's saying, oh, this is not important. But we know that, regulating the food industry, regulating the sugar industry is equally as important, because there is a low literacy level among people and awareness in terms of understanding what are some of the harms of sugar. We saw during COVID, who were the people who succumbed to COVID-19? It's people living with diabetes, people living with high blood pressure. So I think it's important that we don't take the foot off the pedal, and we can look at what has the sugar industry done in the reprieve that it got from government in terms of really no increases in the sugar tax for a couple of years now. And that is a worrying factor in terms of accountability and transparency. by the industry.
And somewhere in between the two sides of those lobbying debates, we need to ultimately protect jobs by also looking at the farmers on the ground who shouldn't be made scapegoats in this issue. Thank you very much for speaking to us. That was the Healthy Living Alliance's Nzama Mbalati.